Okay, my name is Robert Abraham Morss. I was here for 13 months in November 2021 all the way to December of 2022. Some of you might recall me. I was a painter trustee for 12 months while I was here. I didn't have a single disciplinary action, didn't go to the hole. I worked nights, and I never visited the hole, but I painted it, and almost every single inch of this jail. And what I saw and experienced is more horrific and more extensive than what I could recount in a handful of minutes. So I'll do my best to try to simplify them while I was an inmate here. Your mission statement claims to establish a safe and secure and ordered environment. It could be further from the truth or what is actually happening in this building as we speak. As an employee, bearing up under the pressure of this building and the staff that worked here, I remained calm and silent, but also very observant. As you'll know, I didn't have any disciplinary actions. I watched and waited, and as a painter trustee, I saw the horrific underbelly of what Northern Regional Jail would prefer to remain hidden. I've heard many officers brag about the corners where the cameras don't see, and people just happen to get hurt there. I've listened to how upset Captain English was after having to stomp someone's face in with his fancy dress shoes. I've heard how the head chef laughed about how much money she is stealing from the food budget and feeding the inmates meals that were worse than dog food, whose packaging says in bold letters, not for human consumption. I've listened to Lieutenant Taylor brag about how he and several other officers would escort certain inmates into the showers in the middle of the night, uncuff them, and then challenge those inmates to a fist fight where the cameras couldn't see with their notorious knuckle gloves on. I listened to the medical staff while I painted, mind you, this is happening while I'm painting, listening to the medical staff as they mock Weidland and completely disregard whether or not he does have celiac and wish that he would die in this jail. I've listened to Northern Regional Jail officers laugh as food slots were closed in the faces of starving men because they didn't hop out of their bed fast enough, whether or not they worked a 48-hour shift as a trustee. I have observed how officers will steal the belongings of inmates who have purchased items from commissary that their loved ones who were struggling in the broken economy donated for the survival of their loved ones, and then laugh. I have observed how officers will deliberately bang on the cells and the walls and turn on the lights in the middle of the night so that the inmate population will receive absolutely no rest or no peace, which contributes to the psychological and mental breakdown inmate populations have, contributing to the positive feedback loop of officers and inmates continually having abhorrent interactions with one another in this house. I've listened to officers that admitted that they were not going to get a promotion because they were too nice to the inmate population. I've heard officers brag amongst themselves how they will deliberately provoke violence amongst the inmates so that they can blow off some steam and saying, who gives a fuck about the inmates that are in this jail? They're here anyways. Inmates have died because of the sewer water that will accumulate in the pods like a swamp infested with leeches and hepatitis, one of which inmate has already died in this place because of his foot open sore, and then he had that open wound which was denied medical care. That legend was spoken often in this jail. I've often witnessed the blood and the mold and the scribbled cries for help on the walls because I painted over these things for an entire year. I was shoulder checked while trying to paint by several officers in this jail. I've had several nasty and derogatory comments made about my body while trying to paint this jail. I cleaned up the blood after officers would curb stomp an inmate into the floor so bad that blood was soaking up from his orifices into the tiles so that his own blood made the floor become spongy. This event was so gruesome that one officer had to admit that he publicly did not sign up for this and considered leaving employment. There are exceptions among you who decided not to trade their soul for a raise in paycheck or prestige among some wicked men, but that is the exception to the rule of the employees and of the godforsaken halls of Northern Regional Jail. I lost 60 pounds from having to tolerate the pathetic portions that was served and that had no nutritional value whatsoever and had more mouth shit, more cockroaches, than calories inside. Your staff completely fabricated a statement, attempted to make it as if I had a good time while I was in this jail, after I thought it necessary to try to thank Captain English for calling off his dogs a little bit too much after we had been harassed while trying to keep this place clean and painted. I've heard the officers mock the conditions of these men and women, and you think that this misery is funny. And yet while you fail to recognize that at any day you could wake up in front of a jail cell, like the ones that you forced these men and women to occupy in the blink of an eye, and as a matter of fact, if there was a full-blown investigation into the budget of this building and the human rights violations that take place in this building, or the deprivation of constitutional rights of men who have not been convicted of a crime in this building, without a coordinated and planned inspection where you've been given weeks' notice that someone or some group will be walking through the building, so you haul me out of bed so that I can paint over the blood and the mold and the cries for help on the walls, you might end up in a jail cell because of what happens in this place. If you were ambushed with an investigation or an inspection, this place would fail. And those corners where the cameras don't see inmates get beaten with their hands tied behind their back would be revealed, and you wouldn't have enough time for someone to paint over the blood that's on the walls. For an entire year, I kept my mouth shut, but my ears remained open, and my eyes remained open, and I have watched officers who might have been ordinary men at one point in their lives succumb to the temptation to be an ambassador of pure evil. I understand that there is an excuse that can be made because Officer Hull has been relieved and he's gone. But can you honestly say that you've 100% cleaned up this place since that man's departure? Can you actually say that you've become a place of rejuvenating education, rehabilitation since his exodus? I know you cannot make that claim, but you could in the future. I have cited the story of Joseph, Job, and Jonah, and conferred my confines within this building as my stay within a concrete whale, and I would be out of order if I did not act out that biblical story, if I have suffered such a weight of biblical proportions. As you know, I've been pardoned by the President of the United States for my enrollment in January 6th. It's the only reason why I came to this jail. I have no criminal history whatsoever, and I served honorably as an airborne ranger, deployed to Afghanistan 3 times in 2nd Ranger Battalion. I'm not an idiot, I'm not a criminal, and I'm not a dummy. I've done everything in my life to uphold a standard of honor and prestige, to honor those who love me and support me. And yet, I observe that treatment that everybody else in this jail is abundantly aware of, and yet they don't talk about it. I don't want to be here. I don't like you people. And you smile while you inflict disturbing amounts of pain on individuals in this building, and then smile at your children with that same smile when you go home after work calling yourselves the good guys disturbs me. I certainly don't trust you and have every reason to hate you. But because of my interaction with the Almighty, due to how destitute and desperate this facility may be, I acknowledge how I must respond. In the book of Jonah, chapter 2, then Jonah prayed to the Lord and his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called out to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you have heard my voice. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the flood surrounded me, and all your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight. Yet shall I again look upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me to take my life, and the deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head,